foundation of everything, at the foundation of everything is this presence of God. And that when we turn our minds to that, then all of the events that we perceive, everything that we see in the world, it changes. The Course in Miracles this week, the theme is forgiveness. And forgiveness comes from that mindset that God stands at the foundation of everything. And so I'm thinking about a couple of things that have occurred that maybe will give some illustration to this. That one day a couple years ago, we were coming back from an NA meeting, and we had picked up a newcomer and brought him to the meeting. And it's interesting because this kind of sets the tone for the mindset, because when you're doing, a 12-step call, when we're and for those who aren't in a recovery program, when we're in the mindset of helping someone, of actually being helpful, it changes what's going on within us. We have a different perspective. And it changes the perspective on not just that interaction that we're having with this person we want to help, but on what's going on around. And so anyway, we had left the meeting and we were having a conversation with them, with the newcomer, about the possibilities of a life of recovery, the possibilities of a new life undreamed of. In the midst of the suffering. And a car cut in front of us as we were driving. A guy just cut in front of us. Now, the newcomer was sitting in the front seat. And he freaked him out, and then he was mad. Now, I've had that happen many times. When I've been driving, somebody cuts in front of me, and, I get upset with them. May even yell out the window, may do something else. But that night, I didn't even notice it. I mean, I noticed it that he cut in front of me, but I didn't even notice that it was an offense. So now this is interesting, and I think this really comes to the key to this whole thing. That when my mind was stayed on service, when my mind was fixed on giving, this event of the guy cutting in front of me, I didn't take it personally. It didn't even register with me, except that the guy who was sitting in the seat next to me got upset about it. But even that, when the guy sitting next to me got upset about it, I didn't even think anything about that. It was like these two things that could have been disconcerting in a different mindset didn't mean anything. And so this is what it says here about forgiveness. It says, forgiveness recognizes that what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. So now this is not to say that the car didn't go in front of me. What has not occurred is he did not do it to me. He did not do it to me. And this is really important to have this kind. Now, sometimes we can say where it seems pretty clear that the person did it to us. But even with intent of the other person to do something to us, forgiveness says that what we thought our brother did was never done to us, right? It was never done to us. So we recognize that something occurred, but what happens is we start to see that there are other things at play here that have absolutely nothing to do with some kind of personal attack on us. So with people's driving, and of course this is what Ken Wapnick said about it, is he said, where he was talking about this very thing. He was saying how he is so much better at forgiveness, and in most cases he gets to it really quickly, except he was having a problem in traffic, that he would get upset with people until he came to the conclusion, which is exactly what this is talking about. He came to the conclusion, he said, they're not doing it to me. That's just the way they drive, whether I'm there or not, right? So I'm there to observe it right now, and that's just the way they're driving. But they didn't do it to me. And you know that this is the case with so many things that we get upset about, is that we think somebody's doing something to us. We decide to be annoyed. We decide to get upset over it. And so it goes on to say here, it says, forgiveness does not pardon sins and make them real. It sees that there was no sin. So we can think about it in the traffic, in the way of people in traffic, that there may have been an error. An error can be corrected. Sometimes the error is just corrected by all of a sudden you like snap to and you get your driving under control and you get right? Sometimes it's corrected by the insurance company. But it's just an error. They can be corrected, right? And then you go, oh yeah, but sometimes people die out there on the road. Well, their bodies die. But I want to see above that carnage, right? I want to see that spirit is forever. And that's where it's a big mistake, and it's hard for it to be healed in a lot of ways when actually the body dies, because, man, then it's really complicated. But forgiveness sees that there was no sin. And in that view, are all your sins forgiven? So in that moment, now, so this is really, the mindset is so beautiful, because in the moment that I can see that my brother, and if I get upset, I'm not actually seeing him as my brother, but if I can see that my brother didn't do anything to me, then all of a sudden, in that moment, in that mindset, all of my own guilt is washed away. Because this is the only way I actually see it. All my own shortcomings come forth in a projection onto the actions of somebody else. It's convenient. It's kind of what the ego wants. What the ego wants is for me to have focus on what somebody else is doing wrong, so I don't have to think about what I believe I am doing wrong. It's much better if I can put it out on you. And so when I decide that I'm not going to take offense, or decide that there wasn't any offense, then I'm healing myself at the same time. What is sin, he says here, except a false idea about God's Son? Or we could say a false idea about ourselves, if you prefer. Forgiveness merely sees its falsity and therefore lets it go. What then is free to take its place is now the will of God. So then, when something occurs and we decide that it was nothing, and I really love this phrase, it was nothing. Because you've heard it said before. Other people, you may be in a conversation and something happened. Maybe they were injured. Maybe some event happened, and you say something about your concern for them, and they say it was nothing. It was nothing. And we don't actually take it to the limit that what this is talking about, but that's the mindset, that no matter what occurs that could trigger an upset, that we get in this state of mind that says it was nothing. And I mean, to really feel that, to really feel that nothing. It was nothing. So what is then free to take its place is now the will of God. And so this idea of the will of God, sometimes it seems mysterious, but God's will is for good. God's will is for good. God's will is for the best for me, the best for you, the best for all of us. And so this is so anytime we see that phrase or you hear it in conversation or whatever, God's will, just think that. Just think God's will is for good. And that good is the extension of love. So when we are able to say to an offense, it was nothing, then we open the door for the extension of love. And actually, the very act of being able to say it's nothing is that extension. And the extension of love is, instead of me feeling alienated from you because you did this horrible driving, I feel connected to you. And instead of me wanting to let you know how disappointed I am in you, what happens is I only want good to come to you. This is the substitution of those. So this is now, so if we just consider the state of mind, and I think the deal of traffic is such a good example, because if you think about it gives you a little microcosm, because when you're in the car driving, many times you're not by yourself. You got your family in there with you, and your friends, people are there, and then somebody does something, and you get upset, start yelling, hollering, carrying on, or what I used to do, chase them down. And my wife's sitting next to me, scared to death that something, kids may be in the back. I've had it happen where my daughter was in the back with her friend, and they got so scared because I got so upset and went after somebody. So it's a contamination when we do this. Everybody is affected by it. Now, some people in the car may be going along with us, right? Yeah, get him right now. Come on, get him. But it's all, whatever people's reaction, that fear is in the mix. And we may cover that fear very quickly in anger, but that's what's going on. And so, but the other way around, when it's nothing, when it's when we see totally over the top of it, there's peace. There's no upset. And even if someone else in the car gets upset for a second because they got scared, it's healed quickly. It's let go of. And so an unforgiving thought is one that makes a judgment that will not raise to doubt, that it will not raise to doubt, although it is not true. So we make a judgment that the person did something to us, and that was their intention, and what we don't do once that judgment is made, when we're caught up in that unforgiveness, is we will not examine the thought to see if it's actually true. We just take it and we run with it. Well, this idea of how the forgiveness works is that the first idea is don't do anything. So don't react, in other words. Don't yell, just stop. Just in your own mind for a moment, just stop. Even if you got upset, don't do anything. And then you say, well, I think I made all this up anyway, so why am I upset? Now, this is an important step, but we want to argue with it because we say, well, I didn't make it up. He did this, he did that. He obviously can't drive. They did something to me, so I didn't make that up. Well, okay, the car moved in front of you. But what you made up was how you reacted to it. What you made up was what happened next. So the car moved in front of you. You could take that any number of different ways. You're upset. That's what you made up. And that's what's so important about how this works. So we're not actually denying that an event occurred. Now, somewhere along the line, we might actually get to the point where we will deny that the event actually occurred. But that doesn't even matter for our purposes this morning. What matters is that we just get the idea in our head that we are the ones that are deciding how we're reacting to the things that are happening. So if it's in my power to make that choice, whether I'm going to get mad or not, I would rather not. So I tell myself then, you made all this up anyway, so why are you upset? So now I'm not going to be upset, and then I'm going to look at it and say, it goes back to this other truth that we keep talking about, is either we're giving love or we're asking for it. So if someone, and this is how we handle the areas where someone intentionally does something to us. It seems as if they intentionally did something to us. Although it may be difficult at first, we have to come to the place to see that the reason that they did that is because they are suffering. And that the reason that they are suffering is because they feel a lack. When you boil it down, it comes to they feel a lack of love, but they could be in their own minds, they could be feeling a lack of all sorts of different things, right? And this causes a mindset, which we all have experienced, where we do unfortunate and unloving things in response to that noise in our head. So to recognize then that I made up my reaction, now let me look at my brother, and I must see that if he did something to me that seemed offensive, it was because he was suffering. That, in other words, that he made up, in his mind, he made up his reaction, or whatever it was that motivated the thing that we're upset about. And then we recognize that it doesn't have to be that way. And this is really where the forgiveness happens. Is when we actually get a vision that, first, I don't have to be upset. And second, they don't have to be in whatever state of mind that they're in that motivated whatever it is that I thought they did. And you notice my words, right? Because many times, what I thought they did, they actually didn't do. I mean, really, people will say things, people will do things that I totally misinterpret. And it becomes apparent later that I just didn't. And how many times have people come to you and told you a story about what someone did, and you get worked up, and then you get worked up together. You may talk more about it, and it turns out when you get the whole story that that's not even what occurred. This is happening to us all the time. And what this principle, this mindset that God stands under all is saying is, all of it that we observe, anything that causes suffering, is something that we've made up. Either we made it up in our own minds or collectively together, where it's like we're sharing a group hallucination. Now, I think that this is quite a hopeful idea. In other words, what I'm saying is all the suffering in the world, I am not suggesting that it's not there for us to see. I'm not suggesting that the people involved aren't experiencing suffering. But what I'm saying is that we have conspired together to create it at a subconscious level, and therefore it can be healed. It can be forgiven. And that is really we don't want, it seems like when we start thinking about it that way that it's almost another thing to be guilty about, right? It's another thing to feel guilty about. We're contributing to the suffering of the world. But when we think about it as that what we're really doing is just directing a bad movie, we can think more about how it can be corrected. So as each one of us stops cooperating with the fear and going down this path of forgiveness, so the mind is closed and will not be released. So we close our mind to thoughts of love because we feel like we were offended, because we feel like we were cheated, because we feel like we were insulted, because we feel like we were put in danger. Oh, no, I'm not that self-centered, though. It's not just me. Sometimes I get mad because I see the people I love are being mistreated. But really it's still all about me, and it's all about what's still going on inside myself. My mind is closed. I don't want to let go of it. I'm thinking, no, they don't deserve it. This is too serious to forgive. This is, it's unforgivable. The thought protects projection, tightening its chain so distortions are more veiled and more obscure, less easily accessible to doubt, and further kept from reason. So the emotion of it, the emotion of whatever is attached to this negative thing that's occurred that we're upset about,